I mean, the media has got a big role to play, and it has played an appalling hand so far. And although, I mean, I'm not making excuses. It was slightly complex this time because there was the record was set. The record was passed sort of 4 weeks ago. And to be fair, most of the media did cover that. And then it went into the 18 or 20% below. And actually, I think it was really only The Guardian which did that. I think The Sun, and the wonderful Ben Jackson, who's around, he was trying desperately to get some stuff in. Yeah, we're not very good at it. It's not working. And so, you know, you need to write to your whichever paper you work for, or sorry, you read, and tell them why not? Why are we getting so little information? And I mean, that's been one of the problems actually, is that we don't get that much information from there. I mean, that's the awful thing, is that, you know, there's a melting season now in, you know, August, September, and people will write about it then. But for the next 6 months, I wouldn't expect there to be much of a story in the sense of a newspaper story.
But for example, like the case for renewable energy, that's not a seasonal thing.
No, of course.
We want the government to invest in renewable energy.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You just have to keep hammering on. I mean, it's just you know, interest comes and goes, but it just has to come with more.
As a matter of interest, when we heard about the news that we read on the IDC website, we took the block of ice to Downing Street the next day. There was nothing in the papers about it actually that Sunday, and nothing on the Monday whatsoever about the Arctic ice, let alone our iceberg, until John wrote an article for The Guardian the following Tuesday, actually. But there was actually nothing in the papers immediately because I was scanning through them with a microscope.
I wrote 8 pieces.
Yeah, yes, yours came out the Tuesday. Yours was the first one to appear. Yeah, it might be before, yeah. Anyway, okay, so, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to respond to your comment, Phil, about Greenpeace. As a Greenpeace member who spent many weekends over the last few months standing outside Shell garages waving banners, I think Greenpeace is fighting one of the many contests that we have to fight, and I think wars are won by victories in many individual battles. So I see it as just another battle. And just quickly, you made the comment about we don't have much control over what the Russians do. But the Russians are very much dependent on Western technology from ExxonMobil. I think they're partnered with Rosneft, BP are out there as well, and the Shells of this world. I think if we could get them out of the Arctic, as we're trying to get Shell out right now, then it would definitely impinge on Russia's prospects for drilling them.
I won't respond to Greenpeace, but we will have a discussion afterwards. But point taken by everybody, I'm sure. What I should say in my capacity as campaign coordinator, we've had the petition from AMEG. The Campaign Against Climate Change response to this is what it has been for some time, and there is just a lack of anything, you know, in the political arena that approaches the kind of scale or the kind of thing that we need to do. And actually, I suppose I'm going to hit Greenpeace again, but what we're not seeing from, I think, the NGOs like Greenpeace or Friends of the Earth is an ask, a big enough ask to government to reflect the scale of what's actually happening. You know, they're fighting the dog fights that need to happen around where the politics is, around what they might pragmatically achieve given the kind of politics we have. But there's nothing that matches up to what the science is saying in the form of a political ask. So what the Campaign Against Climate Change has had for some time is our climate emergency demands that include zero carbon by 2030, 10% annual emissions cuts, and a few other things, and a million climate jobs to make that happen. But that's all. That is really the only thing, you know, demand out there that approaches the scale that we could get traction behind, that might signal to the public how big this thing is and what we really need to do. And okay, it's very difficult to make political progress with that. We have to start somewhere. So we have our climate emergency EDM with most of those demands. There are postcards at the back you can send to your MP or you can lobby your MP, and we do intend to have, in the middle of next year, a big parliamentary lobby, or just a big, it's not just for the EDM, it's for those emergency demands at Parliament in the middle of next year, if we can do that. But sooner than that, there is this the climate event, Get Fractious, on the 1st of December, our annual climate march. We're particularly focusing on the really insane things that are happening, like new unconventional fossil fuels. So we're building our Grosvenor Keystone pipeline from the Canadian High Commission to the US Embassy, and we want to build a fracking rig outside Parliament. You'll see these little flyers from Gorilla Resources announcing the discovery of a massive amount of shale gas directly beneath the House of Commons. So that's happening on the 1st of December, but we also want to be there to signal that we are concerned about what's happening in the Arctic and this critical moment in the accelerating escalation of the climate crisis. Right, so after that, quick...
Can I just have my plug for AMEG? I think you've had a plug.
I think we had one earlier, John, but
what we want to do is to take your petition to the heads of government, hence the name on the thing. We would hope that the matter will be raised at the G20, because a lot of this is going to affect food prices. That's where it's going to hit the pockets, and the politicians may sit up and realise that the Arctic sea ice does matter for the well-being of their citizens, and that's really what we're saying. Do something.
Can I ask if you have something you can hand round to get people to sign?
yeah.
Oh, that's what we've been handing round.
And this is it.
There are two sheets. There's one sheet just with signatures on, and so you could fill one of those in at the desk. And there's another sheet that tells you what the whole petition is, and you can take it home and give it to your friends and get them to sign and send it to me.
Okay, so do take a look at the petition and you can see what you think. Well,
I was actually really clear.
Yeah, well, Peter is saying that this includes geoengineering, so do read it. I think you should read it, see what you think about it, and if you think it's the right thing to sign it. If you don't, then clearly, then don't. So
we're just calling for action, basically.
Yeah. Well, people can read it.
Don't you want the action? Do you want us to slip into a new climate and food prices to go up? That's the risk.
Yeah,
if we do nothing.
I think it's a very good controversy that will run and run, and we've already heard a lot about it. But let's just get some other people in this gentleman. I don't think I've heard.
I just wanted to ask the question, if we were able to stop carbon emissions today, worldwide, how long would it take for the sea ice to re-establish on that? Are we talking decades, talking centuries?
Never.
And if the answer is never, we need geoengineering.
Right. But my impression was that Mr. Wadham said that we don't know, but possibly never.
Yeah, I think what I was impressed by the scientists with their current state of knowledge is that this is not to say that the sea ice will go forever. It may well come back some years. It will not be necessarily a permanent thing, but the trend is going to be over a long period of time in one direction. So you will see it coming back, maybe next year, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. It'll come back, maybe not 4 or 5 years. The trend will be there.
That is the denial from the men on this with their stupid models.
Okay, John.
That's the problem.
Okay, John, we're getting the point. I see. Sheila.
John Vidal. I mean, I read your articles, and the trouble is they often scare me. I mean, I'm an activist, and if they scare me, do you think sometimes all this information is actually scaring even a Guardian reader, and therefore people go into denial? So I think that sort of when you are writing about all this gloom, you have to, in some way, relate it to an alternative. First of all, you know, that this sort of mad juggernaut of growth is unsustainable, but linking that to an alternative to that. And for the next generation, because the other person it scares is my children and grandchildren. They also, you know, are getting really kind of, yes, sort of scared about. There's so much information and it's so bad that they're feeling overwhelmed by it. And so to link the kind of Arctic stuff and the stuff about resources, because often people leap in here and say, oh well, it's going to bring us water resources, somebody else commented on that. But to link it to the other kind of ways in which we're destroying the planet with the loss of species, biodiversity, all these kind of things, particularly for the next generation, so that they've got some kind of optimism, they've got some kind of education about how we're all part of nature, we're all, you know, on the planet, we're all sort of part of the ecosystem, and we have to sort of live in harmony, and that should be sort of, you know, a message of hope that we try to bring together with all the sort of gloomy information.
You're absolutely right, and it is, I mean, I don't write about Arctic sea ice very often, frankly. This came completely out of the blue, as Peter and others were saying. It was a bit of a surprise. So on the Arctic sea ice, I plead not guilty in the sense that this is a one-off thing for now. So in terms of a news story, it had to be got out there, and it is bad news, but that's just, it's better to know it than not to know. On the broader point of, you know, giving people optimism and some kind of hope, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right, and the media's not good at this, and we don't know, but maybe the newspapers are not the forum for that. Maybe that has to come in more sort of magazine-y type pieces, it has to come in meetings like this, it has to come in local groups and all kinds of other different forums for action and for change. Because there's enormously positive stuff going on. There are fantastic people doing tremendous stuff all the way around the world, really positive. And it's harder to get that kind of piece into a national newspaper, international newspaper, I agree, but it doesn't mean that information isn't coming out, and it is in different ways, and media, you know, there's many kinds of media now, and the social media is much better at this sort of stuff. So we're getting the kind of media which we deserve in a way, and I think there are other ways of getting that out, but unfortunately, you know, we're a sort of rational, scientific, political, you know, sort of boring old fart paper, and we peddle bad news. I mean, it's terrifying. I'm sorry, but it's not much. Tell me the good news, and I'll write it.
Yeah. I think there's nothing worse actually than bogus hope, and there's quite a lot of that around. If you listen to Kevin Anderson's analysis of the government targets and pathways, that's bogus. It's bogus hope, and there's nothing worse than that. There's quite a lot of that, and avoiding the issue and sweetening the pill. So if there's, you know, if we're going to be positive and have hope, it's got to be anchored in real positive suggestions of things that realistically we can do. That's what we need. So it's got to be phrased in terms of, you know, a proposal, an ask, a demand to government, you know, that it matches the scale of what we're up against. Otherwise, you know, there's nothing more dispiriting than a pathetic attempt to be hopeful when actually you know it's just a pathetic attempt. You know, that's my feeling anyway. But let's have. So looking for, yeah, the gentleman in the blue.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I think that this is probably going over something that was already kind of covered, but this thing with mining, and you mentioning the Times, I mean, there have been 2 large stories in the New York Times in the last week about the ice walls. Both of them have concerned mining, and both of them have spoken particularly about rare earth metals as being potential to, for things. They mentioned specifically solar panels. So they're saying that in a way, the melting of the Arctic is in some ways a sign of hope for us in the future. And I think that it seems that in addition to, we do have to cut carbon emissions, but there has to be a change of orientation, that it has to be understood that this is not simply a matter of isolated catastrophes and commercial opportunities, That what we're talking about actually is the continued survival of us and of everything. This is something along the lines of nuclear war. So, I mean, whether people, and attacking things like the idea of mining opportunities, of new petroleum opportunities is important, I think. It's more a comment than a question, that's all. Do you want to?
No.
Yeah, okay, I'll take the point.
John,
okay.
offered it and then...
Two things. Firstly, Phil, when we were talking about the jet stream, that was one-off. That was you're generalising, I think, from a particular. That it happened this year, but with rapid changes, different things will happen, different phenomena will take place, and we don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Secondly, what John Vidal said, in talking about 15, 20 years, I don't think that we've got, I think that we'll be off the planet before then if we haven't taken action. Long before then. I think this is about to explode. So we really have to act fast. And the first, even before geoengineering, otherwise we need geoengineering, first thing, we've got to understand the scale of the problem. And then we can react. That's what we must do.
Okay, thank you, John. I think we're probably going to be winding up pretty soon, but we have got the hall until 10, so I'm sure you'd be able to come up and chat to John amongst yourself. But maybe I'll take one last question from Peter at the back, who has, yeah.
I wanted to, I mean, I think we can drive ourselves into despair and gloom looking at the kind of facts. But I think what we should do, as Phil alluded, was actually think of alternatives. And it seems to me what we need to do is link up the social crisis with the environmental crisis. We have got millions of young people without work. We have millions of jobs which require to be done in renewables, insulation, wind turbines, tidal turbines and so on. So the Campaign for a Million Climate Jobs has actually done a lot of the work in terms of identifying the cost, what needs to be produced where, and so on. We've had two climate caravans going around in May around Scotland, Wales and England, and there's a lot of interest on the ground. So in terms of good news, the climate caravan would have been a good one. The Guardian to have actually covered, in my opinion. Because I don't think we're going to solve the environmental crisis without mobilising millions of people on the ground. And I think the way we do that is essentially or certainly one of the key points, is on the issue of jobs. The pressure on jobs is continuing. We can see there's a clear need for hundreds of thousands of people to get involved in renewables. The pressure could be put there. All the major trade unions are now, and the TUC are now in favour of green jobs or climate jobs. And I think somehow we've got to make sure that campaign is built up.
Okay, I think we've got that. Let's get it.
Technically, I was interested to see that Danny Alexander was saying that 80% of all the growth which we've had in the last few years has been green growth, and that is clearly the future. I think the message gets through to government eventually. We have to tell our political parties. We've got Miliband, in the Labour Party, he's got no excuses. He knows perfectly well he was a climate change secretary, effectively, and you've got a Lib Dem, government. So there's no excuse for the politicians. They know the situation. They need to be given the legitimacy to act and to continue to act. And there's basically just a few people, sort of mad nutters in the right-wing party who are holding this back. So I think we just have to, shame them at every point.
Can I just make a comment?
One or two in America as well.
I just want to, may I please?
Yeah, I'm just going to...
Oh. It's just that the government are not aware of how dangerous the Arctic sea ice situation is. They haven't been told. The Met Office is still denying They've just produced a report that rubbishes Peter Wadham, saying he's completely groundless. His science is baseless. That's what they're saying actually in print in the Met Office report. So there's a complete barrier from people doing the modelling to prevent the government actually knowing what the hell's going on in the Arctic. It's scandalous, absolutely scandalous. And we had these people from the Met Office in our committee meeting, the Environment Audit Committee. We were telling them what was actually happening, and the Met Office people were saying, oh, we don't believe the data. And then, of course, we had the collapse this year. So they changed their tune. In a few months, they changed their tune. Instead of saying, oh, the data's wrong, they've seen that now the satellite data supports the biomass data, that the volume is declining and the extent is crashed. So now they've turned around and said, oh, you can't extrapolate from a graph. That's actually what they said. You can't, it's too dangerous to extrapolate from a graph, which is going like that, pointing down to 2015. I mean, it's absolutely scandalous. And there's nobody standing up there saying this is us absolute scandal. So I'm telling you now, I'm the first person in the world to say that it is an absolute scandal.
Right, and on that note, I think before it becomes embarrassingly small, but we still have John over there, if you want to confront him with something, and John here, who you might try and grab before he can escape, so do come up and ask questions. But thanks all for coming. I thought I would just keep going for those who are really interested.